Two of my favourite tools in my workshop are my Lumberjack bandsaw and planer thicknesser. These are both floor standing tools and come with some steel legs provided. With me having such a tiny workshop, I really needed them to be mobile to give me a little bit of extra in-feed and out-feed space. So a couple of months ago I made some bases for them with casters so I could move them around the workshop. It also made a little bit of extra storage space, but I quickly realised I should have made something better. So in today's video I'm going to be making some mobile cabinets for these tools. I'm going to be doing a couple of different techniques for each one, so if you want to make something similar, you should be able to, no matter what your skill or tool level is. The first one's just going to be a basic box, and I'm going to just use butt joints and screws for this. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but you need minimal tools and it's really quick and easy to do it. And then the second one for my bandsaw, I'm going to do another basic box, but I'm going to recess some shelves in using my router. For the basic box, which is going to be the planer thicknesser stand, I cut all the pieces of 18mm MDF using my track saw and then went around the sides, countersinking the holes where the joints are going to be. I then applied a nice layer of glue and screwed the two side panels to the top and bottom. I inset the back panel to make sure that everything was squared, and this was also glued and screwed in place. To finish this one off, I routed a chamfer to protect the MDF edges, but you could just sand these over if you don't have a router. Next up is the bandsaw stand. I gathered all the pieces that I'd cut earlier and then I marked up where the recesses are going to go on the side panels. To help line this up, I left the two side panels as a single piece. If you don't, you can end up with your shelves out of line. I don't trust the edge guide on this cheap router. To be honest, I don't really trust this cheap router at all, but that's another story. So I clamped a straight piece of MDF on as a guide rail and I routed out the grooves. With those all cut, I could then cut the side panel sheet into two by ripping it in half on the table saw. I could then start assembly by gluing up all of the grooves and the frame panels, and this time I assembled using brad nails, which are much less visible than screws. Once the main frame was together, I slid the shelf pieces in, and these got brad nailed into place, although these could have also just been clamped. I attached the back as an inset panel again, but I made a daft mistake here. I originally had planned this unit to have a 12mm back, so I left the shells 12mm short of the back, but I realised I had some 18mm MDF from the previous bandsaw base, so I used that and I forgot to adjust my measurements for the thickness of the back panel. Here you can see the back panel protruding out the extra 6mm, but with it being the back panel and this cabinet living against a wall, I decided I would leave it, as functionally it was fine and it wouldn't annoy me too much, as I rarely ever see it. I finished this base with the same chamfer as the planer base, and then I added casters to each one. The planer thicknesser was then just bolted to the top after drilling some holes, and the bandsaw added the same way, although this was slightly harder as I couldn't mark the holes for this and needed to measure. I didn't bother putting any finish on either of the boxes. To be honest, MDF on its own is pretty tough, and with these just being workshop spec, they don't really have to look the prettiest. In the next workshop that I move into, I'm going to make everything look a little bit nicer, because hopefully that is going to be a forever workshop. I store various different tools and bandsaw jigs in the bandsaw base, and the planer thicknesser one has mostly offcuts of hardwood that are too good to become firewood. I did end up adding a shelf a little bit later to make the space slightly easier to organise. This was just screwed in place through the sides. So there's a couple of different methods for making some mobile bases for some pretty hefty tools, both of which are pretty beginner friendly. If you've enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to the channel. 10k is the goal for 2025. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.